Welcome to our 26th episode of Two Tankers and a Cat. We're your host. I'm Charlie.
And this is Russell.
Well, we're going to do a quick announcement. I am back to streaming. I'm out of Facebook jail.
So nice.
Again, most of our audience members are like, listen, we just want to hear this historical facts. We don't want to see you driving around in a little digital tank. But those of you who do, come watch me try not to cuss and try to be politically correct. Let's do our Patreon shout-outs.
Yeah, we've still got several at the M1 Abrams level that's given to us through Patreon. We've got Ben from Texas, Kevin Chin, Kyler Montgomery, and Mark Drake at that level. At the M4 Sherman level, we've got Rick Schmidt. At the N3 Stewart level, we've got Andy Crow and ODS Thero.
Excellent. We have been working on getting some merchandise, and we just got in the mail today some basically window stickers.
Yeah.
That says Two Tankers. It's got a big tank on it and everything, and we're going to put pictures of it on Facebook. We're going to send one up to Andrew Hill up there. Yeah, because he's the guy who wrote the book and wants us to come up there. We're planning a trip to go see Andrew. Very fascinating man. We definitely want to do an episode on him and what he's contributed to the tank community. Maybe we can start, with some of these bigger Patreon, like the Abrams level, maybe sending them one.
That'd be pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we can work out a deal where people can click on a link and get, our mugs and t-shirts and everything else.
Sure.
So we're working on that. And as soon as that comes, viable, we're going to do that. In our Discord, we had a guy contact us and said that he would be our moderator and stuff like that. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. And we will get that up and running here pretty quick.
Now, what's the giving levels? Because people keep saying, I'm not going to give you $30 or $40. And I'm like, no, we're not asking for that.
Yeah, the M3 Stewart level, that's right at $2 a month. That's not a whole lot, but any little bit helps. We got the M4 Sherman level that you can give about $5 a month. And we've also got the M1 Abrams level that we asked about $8 a month for it. Or I believe that you can give about any amount a month that you want to. I mean, they can get on there and give whatever they want.
And if you don't know Patreon, we still take PayPal.
Oh, yes. And also I did want to mention there are links now to our Patreon site on our actual webpage at www.twotankersandcat.com. So all the links are on there now to donate through PayPal and Patreon.
Nice. And our Facebook leads to our .com, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, let's just jump right into it. Our first key point today, we are going to be talking about the Ford 3-ton tank. And basically, it's a two-man tank. And one of your favorites. Yeah. And the little tanks are what we call tankettes. And people are like, wait a minute, that's really not the definition of a tank. We know, yes. We know. But we're going to call it, if it's a two-man tank, we're going to call it a tankette.
Sure.
So please understand it's a layman's term. But we're going to cover the Ford 3-ton tank. And then I think it's time, this is episode 26, we need to kick around the future of tankettes. As drone tanks. And we're going to talk about some drone tanks. Now, something you don't know, I forgot to tell Russell this, and this is new to Russell. I've been researching the drone tanks that, and I don't want to get all the I'm trying to be politically correct here. Russia had deployed one of their drone tanks in actual combat in Syria. And we're going to talk about that, but let's jump in on this Ford 3-ton. Now, this is a World War I tank. Russ, give us a little bit about it.
Yeah, during World War I, American forces in France used either French light tanks or British heavy tanks. In 1918, Ford copied the design of the French Renault FT-17 to create an American two-man tank, or known as the Ford 3-ton tank.
Okay, so the actual Ford, the original guy,
Yeah.
like, hey, wait a minute, I think we need to make a tank.
Although it was called a tank, it was really a machine gun carrier.
Yeah, but like we said, I mean, yes, that's an official thing. That's why people say, well, that's not really a tank yet. And I'm like, please understand, we're going to use the layman terms, and we're going to call it, it was a machine gun carrier, but we're going to call it a 3-ton tankette.
Tankette. The Ford 3-ton tank was the smallest and least expensive tank built in the United States. It had 2 Model T Ford engines that together produced 45 horsepower.
So it only had 45 horsepower?
That's incredible. And you think about some of the other ones we've talked about.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, and they said it was the smallest and least expensive. So Ford was like, we got to kick out, production line.
Sure.
And that's what Americans are known for. We kick out the Shermans and everything else, production line. People compliment German engineering. And if you look at some of the cars that are made by the Germans, they make some beautiful cars.
Oh, yeah.
And they're very well designed. And Americans are used to making 50,000 of them and shipping them over.
Yeah.
Kind of like we did the Shermans. So they make these little tankettes. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, both the driver and the gunner sat at the front of the tank. The driver controlled the steering by changing the gear ratio in each engine. The gunner had a 0.3-inch machine gun, which was placed in a limited traverse mount.
Now, we're going to have pictures of this tank, and you're going to look at it. They're sitting side by side like you would be in a passenger car.
Wow.
And it sits low to the ground. And so one guy's controlling both engines, getting them idled the same and turn and twist and everything like that. And the other guy's sitting there with this machine gun and rolling down the road. And when you see the picture, the Renault, FT-17, it's a small tank.
Sure.
We've handled it and seen the actual one that was used in combat. In fact, it had cannon damage to it. And then you look at the picture of this little thing, and it's littler than that.
A prototype of the Ford 3-ton tank was sent to France and was tested and approved before the armistice. Only 15 3-ton tanks were built, although 15,015 were originally ordered.
Okay, so like I said, so the driver and the commander sit next to each other like a sports car. Okay, Russ, I know there was very little information on this tank, and we had to dig up some research on this. But tell us more and touch back on some of the stuff the info you've already said.
Since Renault, a car builder, designed and mass-produced the famous FT back in the United States, Ford was obviously pressed to submit its own design. This was to be the 3-ton tank. Even smaller than the M1917, this model was design focused with mass production in mind. It was very simple, lighter, and more stable, sharing the same thin, long-running track lane arrangement, but with a wider hull, large enough for a driver and seated commander-gunner side by side.
Basically, Ford, is getting static. They're like, hey, Renault's a car builder, and he's kicking out thousands of these tanks, and you're not doing anything.
Sure.
And Ford's like, if I make it cheap and sell it at a good price, I'm going to sell thousands. And like they said, they were like an order for 15,000.
15,000 of them.
That's quite a few.
It is. The latter used a whole bow 30 caliber or 7.62 millimeter Browning machine gun. Just behind were located the power pack, fuel, and ammo. The commander relied on a rotating mushroom-type cupola for vision, but the lack of a true armed 360-degree traverse turret was an obvious problem. There was no compartment separation, so the cramped interior rapidly grew smelly, hot, and extremely noisy during operations. It was propelled by a twin Ford T engine, giving it 90 horsepower total, mated to a Ford planetary gearbox. Estimated top speed was 8 miles per hour, or around 12 kilometers per hour. Although the Army initially ordered 15,000 of them, only 15 were delivered, and 2 reached France before the mass-produced, more satisfying M1917 were made available. Eventually, the program was canceled with the armistice, just as Ford was gearing up for the projected delivery of 100 tanks per day.
There's American ingenuity. They're like, okay, yeah, you want 15,000? We can change our line and we'll kick out 100 of these tanks a day.
100 a day.
And they can ship them on top of each other.
Sure.
But again, not air conditioned, not very much ventilation. The engine's right behind you. It's hot. I'm telling you, me and you side by side in a car with no air conditioning. Man. Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Especially getting shot at.
I wouldn't want to go very far in something like that.
No. So, 100 tanks a day and easy to make. Typical American standards. Russ, give us some stats.
Yeah. The tank weighed, like we talked about, 3 tons. It had a length of about 14 foot or 4.3 meters. It was 6 foot wide or 1.8 meters wide, and it was about 6 foot tall. It had a crew of 2. It had a driver and a gunner. Its main armament was the 30 caliber or 7.62 millimeter Browning machine gun, and it had no secondary armament at all.
Well, we're talking about what, 6 foot tall?
Yeah.
That means
there wouldn't have been much room for anything else.
Yeah, I'm taller than that.
Yeah.
I could be looking over the top of the tank. And they're like, okay, sit down. And I'm like, what do you want us to do? Well, I want you to charge that trench. No.
Wow.
What kind of engine did it have?
Yeah, it had 2 Ford Model T engines. Kicked out about 45 horsepower or 34 kilowatts. Had a power to weight ratio of about 10.4 horsepower per ton. Had an operational range of 55 kilometers or about 34 miles. And
what kind of speed are we talking about?
Yeah. Its speed was about 12.8 kilometers per hour or 8 miles per hour.
8 miles an
hour.
Not
very fast.
So basically,
some humans can probably walk faster than that.
So you're sitting down, and you're sitting there trying to keep both engines going at the same time, and you're heading towards enemy trench lines. And they're like, you know what? This is actually a really good tank.
Yeah.
It's going to let us get up right next to bunkers, machine gun nests, and stuff like that. Because during World War I, machine guns were just devastating people.
Yeah.
So if they could drive anything close and the machine gun them, it was a good idea.
Sure.
Wow. Okay, Russ. They sent some to France. What was the French Army's thoughts on the Ford?
The French Army evaluated the Ford 3-ton tank and thought it inferior to the native Renault FT, which I'm sure they probably would. I mean, after what they'd put into their Renault. However, the 3-ton tank was seen to have potential as a cheap, light, all-terrain artillery tractor, especially for batteries of the Canon D75 Modele 1897. 1,500 3-ton tanks were ordered from Ford.
Basically, the French are saying, hey, our Renault's a better tank, but we could use this for an all-terrain artillery tractor. So we're going to let it carry, our 75 cannon and, and basically be able to machine gun and defend itself.
Sure.
Okay. So so both sides thought the tank was a good idea, but why?
There were ambitious plans to use the vehicle as a machine gun and ammunition carrier, a cargo carrier, a tractor, and a self-propelled howitzer. It was powered by 2 Model T Ford engines, each with its own electric starter and 3-speed transmission. It had 2 forward and 1 reverse speeds. The engines together produced 45 horsepower. It is interesting to speculate the course of armored vehicle development in the U.S. had this little Terrier not been put down.
Okay, so we were sending to the French, and they had 3 transmissions, 2 forward, 1 reverse. if it's going to be in France, shouldn't it have 3 in reverse and 1 in forward?
Oh,
no, I
man.
did it again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Oh.
our French followers are just.
That's horrible.
I apologize. That wasn't politically correct. The French are brave and proud people, and at no point were you calling them. We just thought it'd be funny. It's kind of an ongoing joke that they were faster in reverse, but no, they have a long tradition of military history.
Yes.
We keep hitting on the 2 engines, the T's, but the key on that last bit of information is that it had an electric start. Even the Renault had one of those old crank starters.
The crank starters, yeah.
And if your tank stops,
sure,
you don't want to get out in the middle of gunfire and sit there and crank on it.
I wouldn't.
And that it had a 3-speed transmission. So Ford is doing his transmission stuff and making electric starts. So they're looking at it eventually changing the machine gun out for a little howitzer.
Yeah.
So they can drop shells into it and use it for that and to haul ammo and everything else. So, okay, it's a pretty good vehicle then. The 3-ton tank, there wasn't a lot of information on it, but it was good information. And like I said, this brings up a good question. In today's, we talked about the 3-ton and how it got put down and everything, but you're talking about 2 countries that fought in that big World War I, and they're saying smaller, armed, with not a lot of people, can do a lot of damage. And that stayed in the back of a lot of developers' minds. So we're going to talk about the drones. Now, I know Russ you've seen some of our drone. If you're a Patreon follower, we have exclusive content for you, and basically we do drone footage of tanks and stuff like that, and other footage that you can get. Let's just talk about some of these drones, and this isn't scripted. We're just going off what we're talking about, and we want to get our listeners' thoughts on this too. This is uncharted territory. Let's just talk about drones. What do you think about the drones?
I just think it's going to be incredible, to be honest with you. I mean, if they can go out and do some scouting with a drone tank, I mean, it's just incredible what the opportunities will be there for a technology like that.
I look at our new world aircraft drones that are doing military operations, but the pilot is in Houston, Texas, in an air-conditioned video.
They don't even have to leave the country to operate these.
Yeah, they leave their forward operating base there.
Sure. And
the mechanics put in the film and load it with ammo and everything else, and they wheel it out to the track.
Yeah.
And then it's all the pilot. And the pilot's using satellite links and everything. And people are like, well, you're getting into push-button war. Well, that's technology.
You're right. We're to that point in technology that I think that's what's going to be happening.
People say, well, you can't see person eye to eye, and that makes war not personal. I'm like,
impersonal.
Impersonal. And I'm like, when was war ever personal or impersonal?
Exactly.
And people say, well, what's the main goal? Well, it's to protect your people. People don't understand that if you get a specialized operator, and I hate using the term soldiers because these guys have went above and beyond the training that soldiers get. We're talking about professional operators. These are guys that are trained in scuba and air and parachutes and all these different tactics.
Yeah.
And they're saying, hey, we got to get danger close. Well, can't you get us something that goes out there? Well, instead of sending an aircraft that's $1 billion to drop, one little missile to hit, one little area, why not use these little drones?
Yeah.
Did you see you guys heard about this, that even some of the Iranians are using drones to go out and, I don't want to say harass. I don't want to get into the politics of that. But the Iranians are using drones now on these oil barge ships and stuff like that. Have you heard anything about this?
No, not really.
Yeah, they've been using drones with bombs to try and blow up these oil
Okay. Where they're actually
ships. These oil,
Huh.
what do you call them? Oil tankers? Yeah, oil tankers.
Yeah.
But they've been going out and connecting magnetically to the side of these tanks, and they explode.
Wow.
Blow holes
No,
in
I
them.
had not heard about that yet, but wow. I mean, there's just so many different ways they could use a drone like that as a weapon, probably.
But yeah, the Iranians are using these drones because they're cheap and they're easy to build, and you can get danger close. I know that our military's been using them for years, but we usually use it for surveillance,
Yeah.
like our ground teams and
Sure.
stuff like that.
Sure.
The Americans are working on what I wanted to talk about. The second point is these drones, but the Americans is got the Gladiator tactical unmanned ground vehicle. Now let me go say this again. It's called the Gladiator, and it's a tactical unmanned ground vehicle. So you're going to hear TUGV. The Gladiator program is a U.S. Marines Corps initiative based on the Joint Army Marine Corps Tactical Unmanned Vehicle, TUVs. The ordinance originated by the infantry school, dated November 4th of 1993.
Yeah.
They validated the need for a tactical unmanned ground vehicle system, and the Army approved this program. In August of 1995, and the Marine Corps, and by the Marine Corps in 1996, existing unmanned vehicles contain several deficiencies, which the Army and both the Marine Corps developed and reevaluated design aspects. The developments of the Gladiator allowed it to support dismounted infantry and aid in scouts, surveillance, direct engagement, and obstacle breaching missions. So that's what we're talking about. You get these specialized operators from the Army and the Marine Corps, and they're like, listen, we need, support for, like dismounted infantry. We need it in for scout and surveillance, even in direct engagement and obstacle breaching missions. I hate to bring this up, but like in Afghanistan, but we also had Japan, in the caves and stuff.
Yeah.
You send in this Gladiator that's a mini tank, and you operate it like you do your drone on like an iPad.
Sure.
And it drives in there. It's armor plated, and it's got machine guns and rockets and gas, tear gas.
Yeah.
And you can go in there and see what's in there. And if you see 60 guys with AK-47s and, suicide vests,
Sure.
you're not sending your operators into a trap. So there's a need for drones. And like I was saying, people don't understand, well, what's so important about these operators or these, and I hate using the term special forces, but we'll go ahead and say special force operator. These are guys that were soldiers and they had more advanced training. These soldiers, they have to get educators. They have to provide them with books, technical manuals, training, weapons, food, medical supplies. There is tons of money that goes into training a proper warrior or a proper operator. And this is everywhere in the world.
Sure.
I don't care if you're British or from Brazil. Every country usually has some kind of special operations, operators. Even our police force, we have SWAT teams. These are guys that get specialized weapons and specialized training and the stuff that we don't get in the academy. Tell us a little bit more about the Gladiator, Russ.
The Gladiator TUGV is a robust, compact, unmanned, teleoperated, multi-purpose ground reconnaissance, surveillance, and target acquisition vehicle system possessing a scouting and direct engagement capability. It provides the armed forces with remote reconnaissance, surveillance, and target acquisition, nuclear, biological, and chemical reconnaissance, obstacle breaching, and direct fire capability to neutralize threats and reduce risk to the warfighter.
Or operator.
Or the operator, yeah.
Yep.
After refitting it for cargo carrying and autonomous operations over terrain and roads, it also provides small unit resupply features. The TUGV system can be utilized by infantry battalions and combat engineer company. It's small enough to be strategically, operationally, and tactically deployable worldwide for ground, aircraft, and sea transport missions.
What we're saying, we got technical there. Basically, the Gladiator is a drone that we can fly over, let's say, a special forces unit or even an infantry unit that's running low on food or ammunition or medical supplies, or they need a specialized medical supply. They can put it in this Gladiator that's armed to the teeth, and they can drop it. And
they can kick this thing out of the back of a C-130 airplane and drop it from where it needs to be dropped.
Altitudes you can't see in the middle of the night, and it lands. It sees perfectly in night. It has heat signatures, and if you're a bad guy, it'll open fire on you and terminate with extreme prejudice.
Yes.
Well, it would not even extreme prejudice. It just terminates you because that's what it's programmed to do. The Gladiator on paper has been working pretty well, and it went operational, 2015? We can talk about where, like we were talking about the Ford 3-ton being a little tankette. What was its job? They were going to put 2 guys in there, and they were going to load it with ammo, food, being a carrier, and they were going to drive out to places where they needed to refit people or give ammo or something like that. From that, with a 2-man thing and being light, now they have no man, and they can fly it, land it, and it can drive through enemy territory and get to people where they're down and out.
Just an incredible innovation, if you ask me. I mean, it's just, but like we talked about, there's a lot of people that's probably going to be against it.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the impersonal part of it, but
yeah, and it's all computer.
Sure. But what happens, though, when it breaks down and all it is just the computer part of it?
And we're going to...
And you're not putting anybody else at risk that's inside the thing to...
Right. And I want our audience to comment on this and give us your stories. Email us, send us messages on Facebook, or just comment.
Or if you're out there and actually have any experience
with these drones,
that you can actually talk about,
that's when we need to get on Discord and talk about somebody who's actually dealt with this stuff.
Yeah.
We're just researching this stuff. And the only reason I got interested, I have a friend in Syria, and he's like, you won't believe what the Russians have. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he sent me pictures that I'm not supposed to have and of this thing in actual deployment. And I was like, oh, wow. So I started checking out some of our stuff. We have another, the Gladiator's a small tracked thing, but we have a bigger one called the Black Knight. Tell us a little bit about the Black Knight.
The design of the Black Knight armed robotic demonstrator was started in 2005, and it was unveiled in 2006 at the Association of the United States Army in Washington, D.C. This unmanned ground vehicle is very similar to a light tank armed with a turret-mounted 30mm gun and a 7.62mm coaxial machine gun. The vehicle is fitted with a 300 horsepower Caterpillar Corporation diesel engine.
So this thing, I've seen it. It looks kind of like a Bradley, and it's got a 30mm autocannon, and it's armored, and it's also got, the 7.62, I guess 30 caliber on it if you're using the American side. Yeah. Why we never went to millimeters?
I don't know.
This proves how dumb our country can be sometimes. Because if I can't say the names of people and I can't say the city's names or the countries right, no wonder they didn't expect me to learn millimeters and centimeters. But this thing's fitted with a 300 horse Caterpillar Corporation, and we're going to put some pictures of these up. Promise me we'll do that on Facebook.
Yes.
So if you get a chance, go over there. We're going to have some pictures of the Black Knight, and we'll have the Gladiator. Give us some more information. I know there were some problems with it in the early 2000s, but now they're really looking at the Black Knight. They might change the name of it by the time they get there, but this is an actual tank with a 30mm autocannon that's going to be deployed in combat.
In January 2006, Carnegie Mellon's National Robotics Engineering Center received a contract from BAE Systems to design and add the sensors, hardware, and computing elements for full autonomous navigation capability. In the late summer of 2006, the ARI autonomy system was successfully tested during a week-long field trial in Somerset, Pennsylvania.
When they talk about it was successfully tested, they were firing the cannons, they were firing the machine guns, they were locating enemies. It was going in and out of forest, deep terrain, regular roads, urban terrain, and it worked. There was a few kinks, but they're working these out. Go ahead and...
Yeah, the Black Knight unmanned combat vehicle can be controlled from the commander station of a Bradley, which was demonstrated at the Association of the U.S. Army's 2006 Winter Symposium and Exhibition. Its turret is equipped with operative components from the Bradley Combat Systems program, illustrating the synergy between the current force and the future force. Gun and turret position, as well as information from the commander's independent viewer and the improved Bradley acquisition system, can be seen on a screen in the Bradley commander's crew station. As soldiers dismount, they take a dismounted control device along and continue to operate the Black Knight, receiving information on the single screen on the DCD.
What we're talking about is that the Bradley holds 6 guys, and each one of these guys can have one of these dismounted tactical controls. And I hate to bring this up, again, our video game World Tanks has that Blitz where you can play on iPad. So now they've got real tanks that they're controlling with their fingers and firing and everything like that. So these guys dismount, having the Bradley back there in safety, and these other 6 tanks move up. If they run into combat, they handle that. And when you talk about this Black Knight, it's eventually going to be fitted, like the Bradley is,
Sure,
with the anti-tank missiles. Now you're talking about a 30-millimeter autocannon, 30 caliber machine gun, and it's going to be firing anti-tanks. When it's all out of ammo, they just hit return, and it comes back to a safe spot where the Bradley is, and they reload it and send it back out again.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there, in a forward position. These operators, they're highly trained. Now they're, highly trained in electronics, and they're taking armor to the front of the fight. And if the enemy shoots, disables these or knocks them out, nobody dies.
Nobody dies.
On your side. Tell us a little bit more.
An unmanned ground combat vehicle offers several advantages on modern battlefields as unmanned consorts to ground forces. They are capable of both day and night operation for missions that are too risky for manned ground vehicles, including forward scouting, RSTA, or reconnaissance, surveillance, and target acquisition, also intelligence gathering and investigating hazardous areas.
And when they talk about hazard areas, chemical weapons.
Sure.
Nuclear weapons,
Yes.
depots that are leaking stuff that they shouldn't. And this might be just oil wells,
Sure.
Flaming oil wells and stuff like that. And they're like, what's hiding behind that black smoke? Now with these electronic sensors and radar and stuff, they don't need the visual. They can go in and drive right through it and see it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter if it's night, dark, smoky, or anything. This thing sees everything. And it's reporting back to the guy.
And you're not putting a human being
in risk.
At risk. They also enable operators to acquire situational data from unmanned forward positions and verify mission plans by using map data to confirm the terrain. If required, they can engage enemy assets from a remote position of safety.
Like we were saying, this vehicle, and what they're calling a UGCV, is unmanned ground combat vehicle. This is basically an unmounted Bradley with tons of tech on it, missiles, autocannons, machine guns, and they're driving out, and they can kill tanks, anything.
Pretty much.
And they can find anything. You can't use camouflage against something that can heat sense and electronic sense. And especially when you have an actual operator that's visually looking through cameras at your stuff. Well, and like I said, I want to get the audience involved in this. And I'm not going to talk about how I know about certain things and who I've talked to and stuff, because I don't want to get political. Let's just flat out talk about it. Tell us about the Russian tank drone.
The results are in on the Russian Uran 9 combat drone and its baptism of fire, and it isn't good. Uran 9, bristling with guns and missiles, may look impressive, but it has troubles with the fundamentals, not only of armored warfare, but warfare by remote control. The remote-controlled combat vehicle lost contact with ground control stations, suffered from an unreliable gun, and suspension system and cannot target enemies while on the move.
So what we're talking about is there are some Russian forces operating in Syria right now. I mean, and I don't want to get in the politics of this. People, we're not talking about this. We're trying to stay on focus. And in Syria, they had this Uran 9 combat drone. And this is, as far as I know, this is the first real combat situation where it's getting shot at, RPGs are getting shot at, it's being targeted and stuff. And they're they basically took all the data and went back in, and it's having serious problems. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the Uran 9? Yeah,
the Uran 9 was introduced in 2016, and it's designed as an unmanned fire support vehicle for the Russian ground forces. The UGV is 16.7 feet long and weighs approximately 10 tons. The Uran 9 packs some serious firepower with one 30mm 2A72 automatic cannon and 4 9M120-1 Ataka anti-tank guided missiles.
That is some serious firepower.
The result is a vehicle that is theoretically deadly to troops on foot, light armored vehicles, and even main battle tanks.
What we're talking about, like, put some anti-tank weapons on there, a 30mm cannon, and they're like, okay, we're going to take this out there and we're going to use it. On paper, like they're saying, theoretically, ground troops can't do anything. They're sitting there shooting machine guns at it. It's bouncing off.
Yeah, bouncing right off of it.
And it's firing its machine gun back at them with no armor.
Yeah.
Your light armored vehicles like Humvees or trucks or, any homemade, resistant, armored vehicle that they bring up, it's blowing holes with the 30mm.
Man.
And if they bring in their big tanks, their main battle tanks, their anti-tank guns or rockets or missiles are knocking them out.
Sure.
Killing them.
Gosh.
So if you can take out a bunch of infantry with a 30 cal and then take out their armored vehicles with the 30mm and then take out 4 main battle tanks, you've done a lot of damage.
You're right.
Well, tell us about the reality.
The reality is that the Uran 9 is pretty much a hot mess. One of the most serious problems, of which there are many, is the vehicle is on a short tether, on average capable of straying only about 1,000 to 1,600 feet from its manned control station. Uran 9 lost contact with the control station 19 times, 17 times for a minute or less, and at least in one case up to 1.5 hours. The problem was exacerbated in urban fighting centers with buildings blocking the radio signal.
Oh. So they're getting out there and they're like, okay, at max we can be 1,600. And then when we're inside the city and we're back and we're
we've had those same problems with law enforcement on the radios we use.
That's
being
true.
Around tall buildings, and
that is true. And I'm gonna give you that because we've been inside concrete buildings and just certain parts that your radio can't get out.
Yeah.
And you might be 4 blocks away from the police station and they can't hear you.
Sure.
So these vehicles are, when they don't have a signal, they shut down. And one of them, the fight was so heavy that it took them an hour and a half to get close enough to kick it back on.
The remote fire control system is also a problem, with the 2A72 experiencing a lag before firing 6 times and an outright failure once. Another problem with the Uran is that the armament, optics, and sensors aren't stabilized for firing on the move, requiring the vehicle to stop first.
So they see, people running in the street shooting at it. They have to stop it, wait for the lag to fix.
Yeah.
Sounds like our video game world tanks, because sometimes we lag out and people that play any video game will talk about the hate of lag. So they've got their tank out there and they're like, go ahead and fire. They see the tank point at them. It's waiting to get its order to fire. By that time, they've already moved. They fired, and it's empty. They're suffering from lag. They're losing radio signal.
Uran 9's combat experience in Syria revealed serious problems with the system. That having been said, the UGV was not a vital part of the fighting, and the whole point of sending the systems to a combat zone was to expose flaws that might not show up in peacetime. Uran 9 might be a failure, but the concept itself is promising. If Russia's defense industry can fix the problems, Moscow could have a dependable, lethal robot on its hands and a real threat to NATO forces.
And I don't want to get in the politics of this. We did say that it'd be a threat to NATO forces. Hopefully, Russia and we'll never have a problem with the West. But could the future hold something sad? Something happens, whatever. Yeah, they get this thing running the way it should.
I'm sure they've probably made some pretty good.
You got to remember, they just now
additions to it.
Brought this out of Syria, and they're like, this is a great thing, but here's where we're having problems in. We need to work on our optics. We need to work on our lag. We need to work on that. They have all their bugs. This was in live fire. They shot at it.
Yeah,
I know that they shot at it.
Oh, I'm sure.
And this was used in combat. I guess what I'm saying is once they work these bugs out, this is going to be a deadly vehicle, and it goes back to tankettes.
I agree.
These little bitty tanks are able to kill main battle tanks. Why would you build main battle tanks when you can build these that are smaller, easier to equip?
Toss them out the back of an airplane and get them to where they need to go.
Yeah, you could drop these out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And have armored forces. But what I'm saying, and people aren't, I'm hoping our audience is following us. You get this ground force vehicle, like our Black Knight or the Huron 9. You drop that's your main armor. Yeah. But you got the gladiators that are smaller that are running around handling individual troops and individual teams. And then you put the drones that we have currently that are amazing.
Sure.
Yeah, up in the sky.
Yeah. Where they can get behind the lines and then,
or even break through the lines.
Yeah.
You don't have any soldiers on the front line anymore.
No.
All you've got is mechanics and technical guys and
You'll
engineers.
Have a technology war. That's what it comes down to.
So is that what we're headed to? That's why we're reaching out to our listeners and saying,
I truly think
what's
that's
your
the
thoughts?
direction we probably are.
I hope not.
I agree.
I hope we don't ever have another war and everything's peaceful and everything like that. But what does history teach us?
You're right.
These things are being built to work in nuclear areas, which is horribly scary. And these things can carry nukes in itself.
Well, sure.
And
they'll be able to eventually carry any armament that's available today, I would imagine.
Yeah, and it's totally immune to chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons. They're hard case, so like even your EMP, electric magnetic pulse, wouldn't affect these things. And they probably have Google Earth, showing where the highways and bridges and rivers and everything else. It's just, with satellites and everything.
It's incredible.
Ladies and gentlemen, where are we headed? We would love to get your input. Please, message us and send us some emails. We will try to answer every single one of them. And we appreciate it. What a great episode. Yeah, I know we ran a little long, but why don't we go ahead and do the closing?
Yeah, as always, kind of touch on how you can contact us. Email is twotankersandcat@gmail.com. You can get links to all of the ways you can contact us on our website at www.twotankersandcat.com. You can also contact us through our Facebook page at www.facebook.com/Two Tankers and Cat Podcast. The easiest way there is just to search for Two Tankers and Cat Podcast on Facebook, and that'll take you to our page.
I am still amazed that I can do my Google Home and say, "Hey Google, play Two Tankers and a Cat Podcast."
Yeah, I know.
And they'll play the latest episode.
We are out there everywhere, folks.
And thank you for your support.
Exactly.
We are sorry that we made you think about the future of these wars and the future of these tanks. But like you said, we gave you our ways of contact us. Please do. We'd want to hear what you think.
Exactly.
But until next time, this is Charlie.
And this is Russell. Happy tanking and have a great week.